Great day, great people. We are going to get right into this video. I know you have heard about P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs, being indicted and the indictment being unsealed. We need to talk about it. I spoke about it many months ago when it came up when Cassie released the information, or she sued him, and he paid that suit right away. So it saddens me because, we had admired, we all looked up to Puffy, we enjoyed his music, blah, blah, blah. But, you don't know a person wholeheartedly behind closed doors. Let's just be real. Still, you're not going to know everything, every waking thing of a person. However, many knew about him doing these things, and now it's coming out. So let's listen, and then we're going to talk about it. This is a long video. I'm not going to put this video play it to the end. You can go and check it out for yourself. I need to have I can put this in the description, the link in the description. Okay, so I'll put this on CNN. Now, they're talking about the criminal aspect of it. That's kind of why I wanted to hear this and just hear, explain the technical jargon of what this really means and what some of these things going on in the indictment. And I also have it. I haven't looked at the whole thing, but I am going to read it. And I'm also going to share exactly just what they're saying in the very first part of it. Let's go.
Stacey Schneider. And Stacey, you say today's indictment reads like a mob indictment. What was most shocking to you of all these allegations?
Yeah, the fact, Jake, that the government in this indictment presented evidence alleging that Sean Combs was running a criminal enterprise, and they actually named it in the indictment, the Combs Enterprise. And they said that this enterprise consisted of him as the alleged leader, his employees, assistants, staff, allegedly, that were able to procure women and alleged male sex workers to engage in performances for his own sexual gratification. Where it differs from a mob indictment, it has all the elements of putting together this racketeering allegation of all these moving pieces using resources from his businesses. But the fact that this is about an allegation of sexual gratification being accomplished by alleged human trafficking.
Okay, so real quick, I want to just stop right there. When it comes to the crimes that he has committed, we have to allow the investigation to really unfold for itself before we really just start making all these, judging and doing all this. We can't do that, even though I know many will. My thing is how he handled and dealt with women, and the perversion part. We know this is all part of perversion. And I heard this when this dropped. I heard just perversion. That's what this is truly all about. And that's what she's saying. That's, to me, that is one of the key things she said, is that it was pretty much a lot of this was dealing with his sexual gratification. And I'm not judging a man for being homosexual. I'm not judging a man for being bisexual. That's between him and God. However, the way he treated people, how he was able to stop people from their, career and all these things. These are the things that I'm really just zooming into, as well as a few other things. But when it comes to this trafficking, we need to look it up and really be clear as to what it is. And if all of his dealings with what he was doing at these parties he was having, if it was truly that.
It's one of the most unique indictments I've ever seen in this area, in the area of sex crimes, because the government isn't actually prosecuting the sex crimes,
right,
other than the human trafficking or the sex trafficking. They're not prosecuting any type of alleged sexual abuse to women, although that's part of this racketeering scheme. But the actual charges are racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transporting individuals over state lines to engage in prostitution. The reasoning around all of this, his alleged motivation as presented in that indictment by the government, is for his own personal gratification. And that's just the strangest type of indictment I've ever seen. But I agree with you. This indictment it's very disturbing. The facts presented are out of, a very bad Hollywood story. And a lot of the evidence, alleged evidence, that's been gathered in this case was from those 2 raids that were conducted on his personal homes in Miami and Los Angeles. And the indictment names the things seized that he allegedly made videos of these sexual performances that have been named freak-offs. And there seems to be a ton of evidence allegedly tying this scheme together. So it's an interesting way of prosecuting it, but I understand why they did it that way.
So what did you make of what Elizabeth Wagmeister just reported? And obviously, Sean Diddy Combs and his attorneys they're going to get their day in court. But the idea that the government, in their characterization, does not say that anybody did any of these things non-consensually. What do you make of that?
I make of that as being a big flaw already in the government's case, which the defense was quick to point out. Even if he was engaging in this alleged conduct, there was no allegation or no statement in that indictment saying that any of these alleged victims or alleged witnesses willingly participated in some of these acts that people find offensive, that sound to be offensive. And that's a very important part of the case. What was the consent? But there are enough charges here where outside of what the alleged victims are going to say about how he was using the resources allegedly from his enterprises, his businesses, his well-known Bad Boy Entertainment, his clothing line resources, his liquor line resources. Allegedly, there were funds used from that resources to engage in this alleged prostitution activity across state lines, and
that's where we really have to be clear as to flying women back and forth who consented to go to your parties, who wanted to, be in the mix, and then partake in some of those things that was done. There were consent forms that were supposedly signed. There were people who were, so how does this, and this is where we have to really dive in and do our own research and really listen. Because if these women were willing to, or people were willing to, fly and go to the parties and sign these forms to say they were willing to participate regardless of whatever was going on, even though they may not have expected it, to go down the way it did in regards to all the behind the scenes things that went on at the parties, then that's something else. But nevertheless, if they consented, so I need to be clear. So I can't really speak on that. What does that really mean? And that's what we have to really dial in on. I'm going to go to the next video. Like I said, for me, it saddens me. However, when you do things to hurt people intentionally and you get some type of gratification in it, it's wrong. Something is wrong with the person, and they need to be evaluated. They need to be, by themselves, but by God, because why do that? Why do that? And that's something on the abnormal spectrum. That's not something that a normal, loving human being, even if you don't like a person, it doesn't mean you have to still wish them harm or wish something would happen to them. So, or do things to intentionally make happen to them. So let's go to the next video. It is, here they talk a little bit more about the indictment. And let me just read a little bit before we get it. I get it. You know what? Let me just do that at the end. I'll do that at the end. Let's listen.
Well, from music mogul to an inmate, Sean Diddy Combs is denied bail on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering.
TMZ has been following this case for months now, and Charles Lati-Baudier is joining us to dive deeper into what is.
He said from music mogul to inmate. I mean, man, I know. We knew it was coming. At first, I really didn't think he was going to be able, they were going to lock him up. I really didn't. And he's been referred to as and compared to as Epstein. Yeah, they're comparing the things that he did, and I think it still ties into the sexual gratification, him filming it and doing all these other things. There, those are the similarities. But let's listen.
Is happening. Charles, shocking is an understatement when you hear the details of this case. What are your thoughts after hearing the indictment yesterday?
Good morning, Brian and Natalie. I got to tell you, my thoughts reading the 14-page indictment yesterday were that there are a lot of people in Hollywood who are probably worried about which Diddy parties they were at and what was going on. That's not to say that they were necessarily even involved in any of the things that are alleged by the U.S. Attorney's Office. But if you're at that party and it turns out that that's when he set up one of these freak-off sex parties, or that it was going on in another room and you didn't know about it, there's a good chance that you're going to be called by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And certainly if you're involved, you would get a call, because they're going to want to know everything you want to know and may even want you to be a witness. I just think, we're just starting to scratch the surface of what this case, this case is going to touch and involve. And the feds have said that this remains an open investigation. There could be more charges for Diddy. There could be more charges for other people involved. And usually the way this works is once they find out other people are involved or were witnesses, they bring them in and they sort of lean on them. And it's sort of like, you're going to cooperate with us, or there's a possibility that you could face charges. So this is going to be a slow developing a case here, because we're just getting started. And I don't see how this trial begins anytime before next year.
There are a lot of wild allegations in those documents that came out yesterday, including 1,000 bottles of baby oil. What surprised you the most about what you read yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, that, Brian, was was definitely an alarming graph of the indictment when you read that when they raided, I believe it was the Miami home, where they found 1,000 bottles of, and they said that these were items that were used at the freak-offs. There were also large amounts of drugs, they said: cocaine, ketamine, Molly, GHB, the rape drug. So, they said that the house, according to the feds, that was stocked for these parties that were going on. And then to read their description of how Diddy, as they say, lured women into joining these parties. And they say that he would meet them or lure them, get to know them, and lure them in, thinking they would think that there was going to be a romantic relationship with him. And then it would turn out that they would be at these freak-offs where they would be forced to have, or drugged and forced to have sex with male prostitutes that he was bringing in. And that's one of the counts that he's facing.
And that's the part that, all of it is crazy. I'm not happy about any of it. One thing, is none of this is good. Let's just be clear on that. Let me just make sure I make myself clear. None of this is good. However, I'm not judging him. He's everybody, we all got things we got to work on. But the willingness and intent to harm people for your own pleasure is a problem. A real problem. It is a problem. It is a problem. And what gets me, though, is so many people were aware of this, but were too afraid to speak out.
Also is the transportation of individuals for a purpose of prostitution. So really alarming allegations laid out in court. Diddy, of course, has pled not guilty to all of it. And then the real kicker for him at the end of the day was that the judge said, you will be held without bail. And that means however long it takes for this trial to begin, he will be in a federal detention facility in Brooklyn, and not a very nice one. In fact, a fairly notorious one. So you got to figure it. He wants out of there, and he wants out as soon as possible.
We're in this era right now, Charles, of men with power falling from grace in Hollywood. And when I think about Harvey Weinstein, that was an open secret in Hollywood for a very long time about what he was doing with victims. Was this also the case with P. Diddy, that the people kind of knew this was going on?
Yes, they knew.
I will say this: there were always been whispers about his power and how he wielded that power. But I can't say I heard any whispers about these freak-offs, and it's really alarming. We were talking about it yesterday. One, these parties had a lot of individuals. In fact, the U.S. Attorney's Office.
If you weren't in the who's who, or you weren't in this celebrity group, then you're not gonna know. They knew, and the people that they dealt with knew. Those are some of the artists from the labels. They were aware. They experienced these things. So yes, people knew, and that's what I just said. I feel like a lot of people knew. They just weren't going to say anything. Look how long it took Cassie to come out, or she's tried once before, in fear. There's back and forth. She still made the decision to deal with him. I mean, I've never been in a situation like that, thank God. And I don't know, we don't know every specific detail that went on. But we saw the video. We saw the clip of the video of them in the hotel and him, hitting her and kicking her and all that. I mean, punching her, pulling her back. So we don't know all of this, every instance of everything. However, please don't believe that people didn't know. Come on. Gene Deal has a lot to still say about this. So come on.
Says that the parties would sometimes go on for days. So there are a lot of individuals involved, and yet, and they say this has been going on for more than 10 years, and yet we didn't hear about that. So that means that all the people that were involved, according to the feds, were that he managed to keep them all quiet, that nobody would speak about it. And that does sort of speak to the kind of power he wielded and the fear that people had of him.
Yes, that's
We're also
horrible.
talking about the fact that the beating of Cassie, which was captured on the hotel surveillance video, that was, 6 years ago. And
alleged when Combs
nobody knew about it. Nobody heard about it.
Exactly.
Think about all the people that were at the hotel who may have known about it, people who saw the surveillance video and never spoke about it. And like you said, we're in an era where when things like that happen, people speak out about it. So the fact that no one did, and that it only took this, really Cassie's lawsuit before any of this started coming out, it does kind of speak to the power that he wielded, and that the fact that nobody wanted to cross him.
And Charles, what do you think happens next in this case? Members of Sean Combs' family have been ordered to give up their passports. He's currently in jail. What do you think happens from here?
That sucks. I didn't know
well,
that.
But his attorneys, the first thing that's going to happen is today, his attorneys are going back into court. They have appealed the bail ruling. And like I said, I'm sure he wants out, and that's their first job right now is to get him out. They've offered a $50 million package for bail. That was rejected yesterday, but they're going to take another swing at it today. And then after that, what happens, look, he did surrender his passport to his lawyer. We should say the way his team put it out originally, they made it sound like he had turned it over to the authorities. He had turned over his passport back in April to his lawyer, as did his children and his mother. And their point was they wanted to make the case to the court that, look, we're cooperating here. He is not a flight risk. And they feel like the U.S. Attorney's Office undermined that by raiding his hotel on Monday night and arresting him when they say he was in New York because he was more than willing to surrender. In fact, the plan was for him to surrender on Tuesday, and then for some reason, the feds decided to arrest him Monday night.
Wow.
Diddy's attorneys think they did that so that it would look like he wasn't cooperating, and then the judge would deny him bail, which, as it turns out, is what happened.
Well, Charles, thank you so much for your thoughts on this morning. You guys always...
Man, oh man. Well, great people. As we continue to do our research, as we continue to listen and hear the allegations, we already have, we already had lots of information that was already put out when Cassie, we got to go on facts and not emotions and feelings here. He did some horrible things to many people, and he's paying for it. That's pretty much the bottom line. We reap what we sow. You plant the bad seeds will grow. You plant good seeds, they're going to grow. Just the mere fact that so many people knew all these things, and they said over a course of 10 years, and nobody said anything until Cassie's suit came out. That's insane. But that's the power he had, and that's the fear that people had within them. And that's sad. So, okay, great people, let's get in this comment section. What do you think? How do you feel? And I know, he's getting what he deserves. No doubt. I'm not trying to sugarcoat nothing. Y'all already know how we come on here on this channel. It's about loving ourselves, thinking for ourselves, and growing ourselves. And I hope out of all of this, I'm just going to keep it real. I hope that he changes his life. I really hope he gives his life to God and repents to him for all the wicked things that he's done. All the wicked things that he's done. And he's going to change his ways and become a better man and better man in Christ for himself and his family. He's got what, 5 kids, 4 or 5 kids, maybe 6. We got a little baby now. So I hope that this is going to be the thing that changed his life, because he's been this way since he was a young person, a kid. Whatever happened to him in childhood, and whatever it was, it changed him, and he became a horrible person. That's it. You can't say nothing else about it. He became a horrible person. But we're going to pray for him that he gets his mind together, he gets his spirit and heart together. He's going to change, and he is going to pay for the things that he's done. I love you guys. Thank you for your support. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next video. Like the video, share the video, and keep coming. Love you guys.